Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I never believed in ghosts. Not really. I mean, I'd heard the stories, the whispers in the locker rooms, the late night tales from old wrestlers who'd seen things they couldn't explain. But I always brushed them off. The way I saw it, the only things haunting the WWE were bad booking decisions and injuries. That changed the night I worked security at WrestleMania XX. Madison Square Garden was alive that evening, packed with screaming fans, the air thick with energy. It was one of those nights where you could feel history happening. But backstage, in the maze of corridors and storage rooms, it was quiet. Too quiet. I was stationed near an old locker room, a section of the garden that hadn't been used in years, except for dumping extra gear and broken down props. The door was heavy, metal, paint peeling at the edges. The kind of place people walk past without thinking twice. Around midnight, after most of the crew had left, I heard it. Shuffling. Deep, slow breathing. At first, I thought maybe a crew member had wandered in by mistake. It wasn't uncommon. Guys sometimes got lost in the maze of tunnels beneath the arena. I radioed in, asked if anyone was supposed to be back here. Nothing. The breathing continued, just beyond the door. I hesitated. Something about the sound. It was thick, almost wet, like someone struggling to get air through a crushed windpipe. It sent a prickle down my spine, the kind that tells you to turn around and leave. But I was security. It was my job to check things out. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. Sweat, rust, something damp and metallic. The room was empty. Just a few old benches and dented lockers, but the lights overhead flickered. That's when I saw them. Footprints. Not just one or two. A whole line of them, pressed into the dust-covered floor. They moved across the room, like someone had just walked through, but there was no one there. A shadow shifted in the corner of my eye. I turned, heart hammering, but there was nothing. Just rows of rusting lockers, standing like silent sentries. Then, bang, one of the lockers at the far end slammed shut. The sound echoed through the room, loud enough to make my ears ring. I jumped, full spiking. The locker rattled, like someone was trapped inside, pounding to get out. I swallowed hard. Hello. No answer. I forced my feet to move. My gut screamed at me to turn back, but my hand was already on the handle, yanking the locker door open. Empty. I exhaled sharply, half laughing at myself. Just the old pipes, I told myself. Just the building settling. But then, a whisper, right next to my ear. He shouldn't have one. My breath caught in my throat. The voice was raspy, broken, like someone trying to speak through shattered vocal cords. The air turned ice cold, wrapping around me like a wet sheet. My radio crackled to life with static, hissing and popping in my ear. Then, darkness. The overhead lights snapped off all at once, plunging the room into black. I fumbled for my flashlight, fingers shaking. The beam flickered as I swept it across the room. The dust on the floor was shifting. The footprints, they were changing. New ones were appearing, right in front of me. Step by step, they moved toward me, pressing into the dust like invisible feet were walking straight at me. I backed up, my own breath coming in ragged gasps. My back hit the door, and suddenly the smell was overwhelming. sweat, rust, something else. Something rotten. Then, for just a second, I saw him. A reflection in the locker's dented metal. Not clearly, just a shape. A figure standing behind me. His face half hidden in the shadows. His eyes, dark, empty, sunken deep into his skull. I didn't turn around. I bolted. I don't even remember getting out of the room. One moment I was inside. The next I was halfway down the hall, running like hell. I didn't stop until I reached the main floor, where the echoes of the empty arena felt safe somehow. I found an old WWE road agent sitting near the production truck, sipping coffee. I told him what happened, still breathless. He just looked at me, dead serious. That was Benoit's locker in 2004. I stared at him. My skin went cold all over again. I never set foot in that room again, and I never will. Story 2. I used to work ring crew for WWE. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough, and I got to see the action up close. We traveled from city to city, long nights, fast setups, and even faster teardowns. You'd think after years of it, I'd be used to the weirdness that came with the job, superstitions, backstage whispers, the eerie silence of an empty arena before showtime. But nothing prepared me for what happened in Dallas. It was 2012, one of the last times WWE held an event at the old Reunion Arena before they tore it down. That night, my job was simple. Check the props, make sure everything was in place before the show. That included the Undertaker's coffin. The damn thing was just sitting there backstage, half open, waiting to be used. The crew liked to joke about it, calling it Taker's real resting place. I never paid much attention. I mean, it was just a prop, right? A gimmick. Nothing more. At least, that's what I thought. I was walking past it, clipboard in hand, when I heard it. Breathing. Deep. Slow. Like someone lying inside, just beneath the lid. I stopped. Listened. The backstage area was mostly empty. Just a few guys moving equipment on the far end. No one near me. I took a step closer. Maybe a vent was blowing air through it. Maybe I was just tired, imagining things. I knocked on the wood, just to break the weird feeling creeping up my spine. Anybody in there? Silence. I exhaled, shaking my head at myself. Of course, it was nothing. Just my mind playing tricks. I turned to leave. Creak. The lid moved. Not fast. Not like a gust of wind caught it. But slow. Deliberate, like something inside was pushing it open. I stopped cold. Every hair on my arm stood up. A joke. It had to be a joke. Maybe one of the guys climbed in, trying to mess with me. I stepped forward, grabbed the edge, ready to slam it shut and call out whoever was inside. But before I could, a hand shot out. Pale, bony, fingers curled like claws, locking around my wrist. It was ice cold, not cool, not chilled, but the kind of cold that goes straight to the bone. The kind of cold that doesn't belong in a place filled with hot lights and sweaty wrestlers. I gasped, yanked back, my heart slamming against my ribs. I fell on my ass, scrambling backward so fast I nearly knocked over a stack of chairs. I looked up. The coffin lid hung open, but inside nothing. No one. The hand was gone. I sat there, breathing hard, waiting for someone to pop out, laughing, telling me I'd just been punked. But no one did. No one was there. I don't know how long I sat on the floor, staring at that open coffin, but eventually, someone called my name, snapping me out of it. It was one of the senior crew members, an old guy who had been with WWE for decades. "You okay?" he asked, frowning. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, just, I thought I saw something." He glanced at the coffin, and for a second, just a second, I saw something in his face. Recognition, like he heard this before. Instead of laughing it off, he just said, "Yeah, happens sometimes." Then he walked away like it was nothing. I don't know what I felt that night, what I saw, or didn't see. But when the undertaker made his entrance later, standing near that same coffin, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still inside, watching, waiting, and I wasn't the only one. That night, a few of the guys swore they saw shadows move backstage when no one was there. One roadie refused to walk past the coffin again, and one of the production assistants, she quit the next day. Me, I finished my shift, but I never touched that coffin again. Story 3. WrestleMania 27. Atlanta. I wasn't supposed to be there. The ticket had been a last-minute miracle, a resale that popped up online just days before the event. The guy selling it had listed it for cheap, too cheap, but I didn't question it. Front row of the lower deck. I grabbed it without a second thought. The night was electric. Tens of thousands of fans, the roar of the crowd, the lights painting the Georgia Dome in streaks of white and gold. I had been to a few live events before, but nothing like this. WrestleMania was its own kind of monster. The guy next to me was quiet. Mid-50s salt and pepper hair under a worn WWE cap, a black jacket zipped up tight like he was cold. He didn't cheer, didn't chant, just sat there, hands folded in his lap, his eyes flicking up toward the rafters every few minutes. I ignored him at first. Probably just some old school fan who wasn't into the new generation of wrestling. Maybe a hardcore WCW guy, bitter that his promotion had died a decade ago. I didn't care. This was my night. The show rolled on, match after match, and then, main event time. John Cena versus The Miz. The crowd was on fire. People were on their feet, screaming. And then, the guy next to me finally spoke. "You know someone died here, right?" His voice barely rose above the noise, but I heard it clear as day. Low, scratchy, like he hadn't used it in hours. I turned to him. "What?" He didn't look at me, just nodded toward the upper deck. "Fall. Years ago. They say he still watches every WrestleMania." I laughed, mostly to shake off the sudden chill on my spine. "You okay, man?" He didn't react, just kept staring up. I turned back to the ring, focused on the match, but the mood had shifted. The energy around me fell off. My skin prickled. The noise of the crowd seemed muffled, like I was listening to it through a thick wall. And then, as the match ended, it happened. The scream. Sharp, piercing, a sound that cut through the stadium noise like a blade. It came from above, the rafters. I snapped my head up, along with at least a dozen other people. A few pointed. Security was moving, their flashlights sweeping the upper deck. But there was nothing. No one had fallen. No fight. No disturbance. Just an empty patch of seats high above us. And yet, I swear to God, that scream, it wasn't just a sound. It was full, like something had moved through the air, rushing past, too fast to see. The guy beside me finally turned his head, just slightly, and said, "Every year." I didn't ask what he meant. Didn't want to. The show ended. I left as fast as I could, pushing through the sea of people, my heart still racing. My seat felt colder than before, like the cushion had absorbed the ghost of something old, something restless. Later that night, in my hotel room, I searched online. It was true. A fan had fallen from the upper deck at a WCW event in the late 90s. A tragic accident, a slip, a stumble, a moment of bad luck, and he was gone before anyone could stop it. The section where he had fallen, directly above my seat, and the guy who told me, I never saw him leave, never saw him stand up or push through the crowd. When I looked back at my section from across the arena, my seat was empty. His was too, like he had never been there at all. I don't know what I heard that night. I don't know if I sat in a cursed seat, if the echo of that fall still lingers in the rafters, waiting for its moment to scream again. But I do know one thing. I'll never sit in the upper deck of a stadium again.